Thanks, and good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Tel Aviv University, Professor Ben Israel, and Gilly and the whole workshop team for inviting me, and congratulate them on bringing together such a distinguished group of people today. Einstein has been credited with the following expression: the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. In addition to the fact he never said it, the phrase has become a truism on its way to a cliche. But what if you did the same thing over and over again, wanting the same result, and you stopped getting it? Wouldn't that drive you insane? Hold that thought for a moment. How might we describe the state of mind of security practitioners today? I've never seen them so anxious and frustrated. Why? Because the systems they've been using to great effect year after year and over again are no longer delivering the same result. In fact, between 2005 and 2007, those systems, based on a reactive security model focused on perimeter defenses, have grown increasingly ineffective. You know all that, you say? Nothing new here? Been talking about it for years? Talking, yes. Changing behavior, not so much. But consider this. Based on research commissioned by RSA, organizations are still spending 70 to 80% of their security budgets on preventing intrusions, largely around perimeter defenses, and only 15% to 20% to detect attacks in their environments, again weighted heavily toward the perimeter, and finally only 5 to 10% responding to attacks to prevent loss and disruption. This ongoing investment strategy is focused on a model that is clearly broken. Now that's insanity. The obvious question is, why does this persist? There's 4 reasons, actually. Budget inertia, we're used to spending that way. A technology gap. Good alternatives for detection and response are only just coming to market. Lack of information sharing at scale, and a critical skills shortage of cybersecurity personnel. As a result, those of you defending our IT and critical infrastructures are confused, even fearful about what to do, and from what I see, you're very angry. Angry at the situation itself, angry at your own governments for lack of coordinated action, and angry at vendors for peddling an endless stream of point products. Let's discuss the situation first, why and how we need to address it more intelligently, and then talk about what governments and vendors can do. To really understand the problem and what to do about it, you need perspective on 3 things: the attack surface, the threat environment, and how security models must evolve. Too often, we focus solely on the evolution of the threat environment without considering the impact of technology adoption on the expansion of the attack surface. Let's take a more detailed look at what's been happening since 2007, when the perimeter started to fall apart, and project it out through 2020. We'll begin with applications. It was only in 2007 that we really saw significant uptake in web front-ended apps. But today, in 2013, the common refrain is, there's an app for that. And by 2020, there'll be a deluge of big data applications monitoring and checking and evaluating and analyzing everything about our personal lives and the world around us. And there'll be plenty of data to analyze as we move from 1/4 of a zettabyte to 2 zettabytes to as much as 40 to 60 zettabytes over that same time period. We are gathering so much information day in and day out that it's literally being accumulated at an astonishing rate. And just for context, 1 zettabyte alone is the equivalent of 4.9 quadrillion books. Pretty hard to get your head around. Our imaginations can't even comprehend it. And the reason we're going to have so much of this data is the number of people and things generating it. It was only in 2007 that the iPhone was launched. Today, we have full mobile ubiquity, and by 2020, we will have the Internet of Things enabled by IPv version 6, when tens of billions, perhaps hundreds of billions of devices will be connected to the Internet. These trends have already taken away the primary element of our historical model for cybersecurity, the perimeter defense, that we're still investing in at a disproportionately high rate. And already in 2013, we're in a hyper-connected world that has facilitated access and productivity for all of us, but with the unintended consequence of doing the same for our adversaries. And if all that weren't enough, it's getting easier and easier with the advent of social media for our adversaries to trick, spoof, and assume our digital personas. I must say, I'm amused by the privacy advocates who are worried about big business and big brother governments infringing on their privacy when criminals, rogue nation states, hacktivists, and anyone else who wants to already is. Given the reports in the U.S. press recently, it's clear we need to have a more constructive dialogue about privacy. Governments do need to explain why they need to do what they're doing to protect us, and how looking at vast streams of data to spot anomalies doesn't constitute eavesdropping on every single phone call or email. And privacy advocates need to listen and understand this and then make their own arguments. There's way too much at stake. In the first, just reflect on all of what I've said, not only about privacy, but the things I said about the attack surface for just a moment. In the first 2 decades of the new millennium, we will have gone from a cyber attack surface that has just a few points of ingress and egress through a controlled, firewalled perimeter to almost infinity when you think of the impact of mobility, web apps, big data, social media, and the Internet of Things. And how are our adversaries going about their business over the same time horizon? Their targets and methodologies continue to expand as their attacks get more complicated and coordinated. But perhaps more troubling is the evolution from traditional intrusive attacks to disruptive attacks. Disruptive attacks like we're seeing at the U.S. banks with DDoS, as well as the Saudi Aramco attack that we saw last year. The evolution to these disruptive attacks is bad enough, but they also represent a serious escalation because they're the precursor, the pathway to those long-anticipated destructive ones. Despite the hype, destructive attacks are still next to impossible to carry out solely from the Internet without manual intervention. But as we transition to IPv version 6 and create the Internet of Things, IP enabling more and more elements of our physical infrastructure, attacks on digital systems that result in physical destruction will become a reality. A chilling, sobering thought. Taken together, the implication is that the ongoing expansion of the attack surface and the escalation in the threat environment require urgent action. There must be a sense of urgency to understand the security implications in everything we do so that we develop and implement the right security model. The only way to reach and maintain the appropriate level of understanding is through knowledge. Knowledge from ecosystems, the very subject of this conference, from a much higher level of collaboration between public, private, and vendor organizations. Knowledge that will replace fear with confidence. Knowledge that will guide our actions. Not surprisingly, the new model of security that we are advocating is an intelligence-driven one to replace the ineffective, reactive, and perimeter-based model of the past. Now, in prior keynotes, I've outlined the requirements for such a system. I'll repeat them briefly this morning. First, a thorough understanding of risk. Next, the use of dynamic, agile controls to replace those outdated, static perimeter ones. And last, a management system that has the ability to analyze vast streams of data from numerous sources to produce actionable information. To maximize effectiveness of those sources, we must get information both externally and internally. We must become adept, way more adept, at information sharing. With respect to understanding risk, time doesn't permit a long discussion. But in short, we need to do a better job. However, no matter how well we improve our understanding and management of risk, at best, we'll be limited to understanding known threats and, to a lesser degree, known unknowns. An example of a known unknown is being aware that vulnerabilities will increase as we increase the level of access and amount of data being exposed through mobile devices and BYOD. But an unknown unknown is something we couldn't have had foreknowledge of that could create an adverse condition. And we'd be wise to understand that this is going to be an inevitable consequence of change, an inevitable consequence of the dynamism from the ongoing acceleration of technology adoption. So how does one build an underlying system that can anticipate and spot an unknown threat? Can we even architect an intelligence-driven model that is future-proof? I'm not talking about perfect security here. I'm talking about a model that allows us to detect attacks and respond quickly. I'm talking about a model based on big data. Now, big data is a buzzword that we've heard a lot about, but big data will make an intelligence-driven model viable. For all the buzz around the term, it's important that we define it. Fundamentally, big data is the ability to extract meaning, to sort through the masses of data elements and find the hidden patterns, the unexpected correlation, the surprising connection. It's about analyzing vast and complex data sets at high speed that, in our case, will allow us to spot the faint signal of an attack. Because at some point, no matter how clever the attacker, they must do something anomalous. Consider how an intelligence-driven model works using big data. Big data will be applied in two ways: in security management and in the development and application of individual controls. Security management systems must be able to gain full visibility into all data, unstructured and structured, internal and external. Underlying big data architectures will be scalable enough such that all data can be analyzed, no matter how expansive or fast-changing. As a result, organizations will be able to build a mosaic of specific information about digital assets, users, and infrastructure, allowing the system to spot and correlate abnormal behavior in people and in the flow and use of data. The management system must be well integrated with GRC systems and task-specific tools so that we can detect those attacks early, or even in advance, and then trigger automated defenses such as blocking network traffic, quarantining systems, or requiring additional identity verification. As to the controls themselves, because they have so much information, big data controls will be smart to begin with. They'll also have the capacity to be self-learning. They will be able to inform or be informed by other controls. They'll be able to feed or receive intelligence from security management systems and report to and receive instructions from GRC systems. Armed with a thorough understanding of risk at the outset, this big data-oriented management and control environment completes a vision of intelligence-driven security. So what else is needed? Action. Action on the part of boards of directors and C-level executives, practitioners, governments, and vendors. Here are my thoughts on each constituency. For boards of directors in the C-level suite on down, recognize your responsibility to be educated so you will have a clear level of understanding. You should set the tone for evaluation and management of risk, and you should ensure that risk is managed on a more granular basis throughout the organization, not just in the IT and security groups. And last, be in a position to make intelligent decisions so that appropriate resources are available to your security organization. For security practitioners, I have 3 recommendations. First, look critically at those budgets. Design a plan that transitions your existing infrastructure to an intelligence-driven one. Migrate from point products to a unified security infrastructure using big data controls. Implementing these tools will give you true defense in depth. Next, strengthen your operations data science skills by adding data scientists or outside partners to manage your organization's big data capabilities and to overcome the skills shortage. And last, leverage external threat intelligence, augmenting internal analytics programs with external threat feeds from as many sources as possible. What about governments? You need to unite us domestically and internationally. Implement a national strategy that includes the following. Get your own houses in order. Lead by example. You have too much at stake for the protection of critical assets and infrastructure. Facilitate information sharing by acting as a central clearinghouse to exchange information at line speed about current threats and attacks. It was good to hear Dr. Matanya this morning espouse this very thing among nations. And big data applications will only be as good as the data itself, and sharing of external threat feeds will have a force multiplier effect in our environments. Regulation should also be an important element of the strategy. But governments will never keep up with the pace of change of technology and the threat environment. Regulation should focus on outcomes and not prescriptive measures. If you must prescribe, do so around best practices that can be applied to fit multiple use cases using a variety of technologies. Also, help us with the serious skills shortage of cyber personnel. Foster and fund security education programs to produce the human resources that we need. And next, cooperate internationally. Extend your information sharing among networks of countries. This will facilitate the tracking and capture of our adversaries. Jointly develop rules of conduct around intellectual property. This is fundamental to globalization and e-commerce. Finally, and most important, eliminate the prospect of destructive attacks and cyber warfare. I'm afraid the genie is already escaping that bottle. As vendors, we must close the technology gap for defending ourselves that has been created by the expanding attack surface and escalating threat environment. We must help our customers migrate to an intelligence-driven model as quickly as possible. We must stop the steady drip of point products and ensure we take a big data approach to the controls, as I outlined earlier. We, too, must cooperate so our technologies work seamlessly in our customers' environments. So that completes my recommendations, but what about the benefits? Historically, the benefits of our security infrastructures have been in our ability to react and act against known threats. That's no longer good enough. But enabled by big data, intelligence-driven security will also have the ability to act against both the known unknowns and unknown unknowns that I talked about earlier. I don't mean to imply that we are headed to some security utopia. And as President Perez said, we must never be satisfied. But we should at least be able to keep pace with our adversaries and in many instances get ahead of them. But only if all constituencies work together in a collaborative ecosystem. And that's why conferences like this are so important. We come together for a common purpose, to make sure that technology is used for the benefit of all of us. Thank you very much.